the title of today's session is Continuing Effective Reading Support Strategies Without Bursting the Bubble. You can see me there smiling with my reader pen, and you can probably also see myself in the screen in the corner, and Emma Pallot, who is our guest today. Hi, Emma. So yeah, we're really lucky to have Emma on board as well. And let's have a look at the overview of today's workshop. So firstly, we're going to touch on the pain points or potential pain points of teaching bubbles and how they may affect pupils most in need of additional support. We're going to take a look at how assistive technology can provide pupils with independent support strategies, which we know is crucial at this time. And then we'll take our focus on how engaging student-led literacy activities can build confidence, reduce anxieties, and then can help to successfully implement these self-supporting literacy strategies that we'll touch on. And then it leads us to our guest, Emma, so you won't have to endure me for the entirety of today's session. Emma's an SEN literacy specialist based down in Brighton and Hove in East Sussex. And she will be sort of talking to us about how she's implemented reader pens in schools and the effect that that's had on pupils. And then also we always have time for a Q&A. So there is a chat box. I can see someone's made use of that already. So hi guys in the chat box. And there is a chat box there that's open the whole way throughout the presentation. And what we'll try and do is if you put questions in as they arise in your mind, then we'll get to them at the end rather than starting in the presentation as we go along. But please, we encourage the questions. So anything that crops up, please do share it with us, and we'll look forward to getting to that at the end. Now, before we jump into the sort of core content of today's session, I always like to do a bit of who are scanning pens. So really, some of you might know scanning pens really well. Some of you may be already using scanning pens in your school and just be looking for a bit of additional information. But really, if you haven't come across us before, I really want to let you know a bit about who we are as a company. So firstly, we were established in 2004. We are an international company, which is fantastic. We're really spreading our sort of message globally, which we're all very proud of. And our head office and main base where we kicked off the efforts of the company is in the UK, where I'm based. And I suppose a lot of you are here today, apart from I've got a hello from Kenya in the chat box. So hi to the guys over in Kenya. That's brilliant that you've been able to join us. But yeah, we've got offices across the United States, Australia, Canada, and most recently as far afield as India. So we are really proud that the message we're trying to spread and the assistive technology that we're providing is getting to learners and people across the world. That's brilliant. We have supplied, I'm always reluctant of this number in my presentations actually, because it says we've supplied over 6,000 education institutions. Well, that should be going up daily and is going up daily, which we're really proud of. So yeah, it's a loose figure, but something that we're really proud of actually is that we can say in the UK, we're in over half of the secondary schools. Now, for me, my focus is in primary phase, and actually we are seeing a growing uptake in the primary phase. And I suppose a lot of you joining the call today are probably working in the primary phase, and you would agree with me that early implementation of any sort of assistive technology or any learning support resource, the earlier the implementation happens, the better the sort of chances are for success for the individuals. So really proud that we're making sort of inroads into the primary market as a company. And then, yeah, the next point I've put down here is we're starters of a dyslexia awareness movement, the hashtag Succeed with Dyslexia. So that's something that's been going for around a year or two now, and it's really sort of gathering pace. And it's just something that is designed to raise awareness across the world for people suffering with dyslexia, which, as you would imagine, is one of the main sort of focal points of people who use our resources. So yeah, and actually the Succeed with Dyslexia movement is supporting something which you might be able to see on my t-shirt here, Go Red with Dyslexia, which I'm sure you guys are all aware. October is Dyslexia Awareness Month. So yeah, we're all wearing red. We started that movement last year, and actually we saw buildings such as the one I like to reference is the Blackpool Tower. So the Blackpool Tower lit up red, as did other buildings across the world. So it was really exciting to see that gathering pace, and we're all wearing red this month. And maybe if some of you guys in your schools or schools you support are doing so, please drop that in the chat, because it's good to get some feedback on that. Or if you've seen it online on Twitter and stuff, it's really been gathering some pace. So yeah, hashtag Succeed with Dyslexia, and Go Red with Dyslexia, Go Red for Dyslexia for October. So if you've got any questions about that, guys, please do drop them in the chat as well, and we'll get to those towards the end. And as you would imagine, look, we've got a huge company ethos on improving the literacy journey for all. So of course, with those with dyslexia, but many other SPLDs, and of course, any reading difficulty at all, really. And with that in mind, we support and sponsor the BDA, British Dyslexia Association helpline, so that those who suffer with dyslexia, or their family members are suffering with dyslexia, or the students they support they have access to a helpline with professionals that they can dial in and get support from at any time. So that's something, again, that we are really keen to continue sponsoring and continue our partnership with the BDA and the support helpline that they offer, it's fantastic work that they do. And lastly, just the last little bit of company information before we kick on. We've proudly won a lot of awards as a company and as an assistive tech provider within the SEN market. And most recently this year, we won the Company of the Year at the BET 2020 Awards, which I don't know for any of you guys that were there. Definitely for me, it feels like a long time ago, but it's a proud moment for us. And you can see on the slide that there is a picture of some of the team there celebrating with the award. And looking at that, I think I didn't quite make the cut for that picture. But yeah, it's brilliant to see, getting recognition, a company doing what we do, getting recognition on such a large scale. So yeah, we're really proud of that. And that's enough about us, as they say. We'll kick on into the sort of real reasons why you guys are here today, and the sort of real core content of the session. Now, we want to look at the sort of education landscape today, and how the sort of potential pain points of teaching bubbles, what they are. I've spoken with a lot of teachers over the recent weeks, I suppose, since we've been back in school the last couple of months, and really sort of got their opinions on what are the pain points of the teaching bubbles that we find ourselves teaching in, and how may they be affecting the pupils most in need of additional support. So yeah, some of the things that I've heard, and you might echo, and again, I encourage everyone to talk in the chat, please, about their experiences. But some things that have come up my end are students with reading difficulties are often used to receiving individual support from in-class teaching assistants and Senkos, as well as their in-class teacher. Now, with limited staff allowed in the classrooms, this support can, as you would imagine, be harder to come by for students. Ordinarily, I think it's fair to say, students' confidence would be ordinarily increased by the knowledge that they have those members of staff close to them in the classroom to, ask for support for certain words, reading certain words, processing certain questions, or just having the knowledge that they are there to provide that ongoing support. Without those teachers or those members of staff there being able to support them, I think we could all agree that can lead to increased anxieties for these students, attached to not only their reading, but of course attached to their overall studies, which is a spiraling effect that we really want to stop. And these are the things that I and we as a company firmly believe that assistive technology can really help to support. And I'm really keen to highlight that in today's session and every day, working with scanning pens, which is brilliant. Other things that I've heard from teachers, in some classrooms around the country, again, I can't speak for every sort of classroom around the country. I know it's different, but in some classrooms around the country, I know that teacher movement across the class is limited, which not only means that students don't have access to the teaching assistants that we just mentioned, or that close by support to them, but they will actually have to repeatedly sort of have their hand up, having to ask for support, which again, I think we can all agree for students suffering with SPLDs or students with sort of reading anxieties, that can be the cause of much worry. And as you would imagine, that kind of worry, we don't want to increase it. We want to alleviate that kind of pain point, if you like, or that worry for students. So we really need to sort of look at ways in which we can do that. And that is, of course, the point of today's session. Now, there's been a big change in learning environment as well. We know that, and we know that change can also lead to increased concerns for students. And that change, I'm sure you guys are working really hard in the classrooms to ensure that change is minimal for students, but we can't ignore it. There has been a change in the learning environment. And the way in which teaching strategies are having to be adapted can potentially cause upset for students. Now, I know some students might be adapting perfectly well, but we need to look at those that are most in need of additional support and might be struggling to adapt to this change in learning environment. So offering them an alternative method, if you like, of support that maybe even just mirrors the previous levels of support they had, or even potentially betters in the long run the previous level of support they're receiving, can be crucial to the success of the students' learning journeys. So that's where, again, I really think assistive technology can sort of really support our students that find themselves, I didn't want to say suffering, but sort of suffering from the pain points that might be arising. Because again, I don't want to sit here and act like these pain points are fluent in every classroom, but I'm sure that they are really sort of prominent in certain groups of students across the country. And of course, another thing that's come up a lot when I've been speaking to teachers is there's no shared resources in the classroom. So it's vitally important for us to look at resources that can be used independently, that students can benefit from self-support. Which brings me on to my next slide nicely, which is how can assistive technology provide pupils with independent support strategies? So, with the points that we've touched on above in mind, I want to sort of look at how assistive technology, and in this case, the Reader Pen, can provide students with independent support that gives them a strategy to succeed. Because, of course, the overall reason that we're trying to improve the learning journey is for these students to succeed and really have the sort of necessary tools, if you like, to succeed as they go on into secondary school and then go on into further education and then, of course, on into the workplace. So the Reader Pen, the great things about giving them that strategy via the Reader Pen is it's designed to be used independently. And we know a great way for students to learn is by doing. So providing the technology that helps them to support themselves really promotes that independence and, gives them this platform that I keep mentioning to succeed. So especially at a time where this individual support may be less available to come by, as we touched in the previous slide, enabling students to really sort of do this support and allow them to process text by themselves and look up definitions of words that they don't understand with the support of the Reader Pen. This can really sort of therefore minimize that need for additional support. Which of course then in turn plays a huge part in building their confidence attached to reading, and then in fact their confidence overall, which again will play a huge part in the success of their learning journey, which is the key focus here. And of course, while building confidence, we are reducing those reading anxieties, and I'm sure all of you involved in the classroom, the sort of the joy on students' face when these reading anxieties are alleviated is something that, I think I can speak for the majority of the Scanning Pens team and say that those are the sort of magic moments that we love to receive in terms of feedback. And if we can build that confidence and reduce these anxieties that do crop up in the classroom, then we are really feeling like we're doing our job in supporting teachers to do so. In turn, minimizing their need for support, of course, obviously frees up teacher and teacher assistant time, which we know now more than ever is of an absolute premium. So that's another sort of core thing or key thing that the assistive tech can really support with in this independent support strategy. The other brilliant thing I would say about Reader Pens and actually many assistive technology products is that they are very discreet. So they really can be used in any classroom setting without causing any disruption. Children or pupils can use them very discreetly. They're the size of an actual pen, and you can really hear the text back through a headphone. So there's no disruption to the lesson at all. And having these supportive resources in the classroom can really enable teachers to actually level the playing field and therefore, close the gap that might have arisen or might be arising in the classroom. And I say this as reading aids, such as Reader Pens, allow students to access age-relevant text by themselves, which, maybe previously they wouldn't have been able to do so without that additional support. And then often, actually, we receive feedback from students about how the pens have really allowed them to do this and really sort of access that age-relevant text. And it really gives them that boost as they recognize they're accessing age-relevant text and not taking a backward step. They're able to access the books and that they want to, or that are, popular for their age, and that again is key feedback that we receive from students, and it really sort of lights our eyes up, because of course that is the main message we want to receive, that sort of fantastic pupil voice when they are really being given the tools to succeed. So yeah, that obviously therefore gives the teachers the sort of knowledge, if you like, that they are increasing the number of pupils in their class to access all areas of the curriculum, and then of course therefore they're closing the gap by doing so. And as you can imagine, when a pupil requires reading support, it isn't just in English reading as well. It is across the curriculum as a whole. So, you know, this notion that the reader pen might just support them in their English reading, it's not true. And when they're really implemented correctly, you know, they can be used across the maths curriculum to help children process the questions that they're doing and actually get them to the core of answering the question. And actually using them across all subjects really shows again that you're really allowing children with reading difficulties to access all areas of the curriculum, which again is one of the key sort of selling points of the Reader Pen and one of the key benefits that we see. So it's fantastic when we hear from schools that Reader Pens have acted as this almost a bridge, you know, in the classroom and really help teachers to close the gap, so to speak. And now, as I said, maybe some of you have already seen the Reader Pens in action, and maybe this is the first time in hearing about them at all. But this graphic on the screen here includes the pen. And I'll pull up a pen here just so you can see it in size. It is a small, discrete feature, and it's nice, sort of slick, easy to use, and the key features are listed in the graphic here. So you have the text reader. As I alluded to, this independent support is giving students the ability to scan over text and have that text read back to them. Now, the Reader Pens come with a headphone, or the pen will read the text aloud. So as you imagine, in the classroom, ordinarily we would have a headphone in so we can hear the Reader Pen of our text, saying out our text that we scanned, and also still hear what's going on in the lesson. Now, scanning over printed text, you can scan one individual word, a sentence, a line, you know, a whole paragraph of text, and you're really able to scan that and hear that back as many times as you want. The button in the middle there allows you to press it and then press again until you've heard the text enough times for you to process that text and move on. Excuse me. So that's the sort of key feature of the text reader, allowing children or users to process the text and hear it back at their own processing speed. And to do so, you're actually able to personalize the text reader. So you can put a word pause in between each word, a punctuation pause in between the punctuations, and actually you can slow down the overall pace that the text is read out. So we know all of our users process text at different speeds, and it really allows them to match their own personal preferences or personal processing speeds. And then, you know, that once set, those settings will stay, and then the child can use the pen to match their processing speeds going forward. The dictionary function that you see there as well is key to mention. That the dictionary, as you would imagine, when you scanned over an individual word, it will read the meaning of that word out aloud. Now, the Reader Pen comes complete with the Oxford Primary Dictionary, so it gives the simplified definitions of words to the user. So as well as having other dictionaries in there, if you are supporting older children, you are able to use the Oxford Primary Dictionary for the simplified versions, the Collins, and then among some other foreign dictionaries like the French dictionary and the Spanish dictionary too. Both when using the text reader and the dictionary, you can see that on the graphic there's text on the screen. Now, as the text is being read out to you via the headphone, the text will appear on the screen, whether it's reading through the dictionary definition or whether it's reading through text that you scan with the text reader. And as each word is read, it's highlighted to you. So you get not only the audio, but you're also getting the visual. So hopefully when users that we see using the Reader Pens are often struggling to take that text from the page and really process it. Those users are actually able to see that text as it's been read out, and it's highlighted in a nice bright highlighted color. So hopefully that gives a bit more stickability, and helps improve their literacy journey going forward. And those are the two core functions. As you can see, there are also scan to file, which allows users to scan text and save it either into the Reader Pen and play that back at a later date, or upload it into their computer to access and edit in, let's say, a Word document, or add it into a PowerPoint. So if you are, using it at maybe post-primary into secondary, that sort of really helps with coursework. Or if you are using in primary, you can have scanned over some piece of text like a poem that you're working on, and you can have that read back to you as many times as you want and access it at a later date. The recorder, much the same, but with voice. So you are able to voice record into the Reader Pen, and it has an 8 gig memory so that you can play that back once saved. So in primary phase, we often see a lot of reflective activities happening, or even sort of well-being messages being left in by the Senko. That was sort of in the previous environment when you were able to share resources. Now we see, a great way is actually recording in areas of text that are struggling and really saying them back to yourselves and hearing them back as that sort of reflective activity. And then the last thing on the graphic there is the settings, which I mentioned. You're able to slow it down to your speeds, speed it up, really match your processing speed. You can also actually change the accents in there now, and you can change languages in which pens are read out in as well. So it really fantastic, and it really is adaptable to your own individual needs. And just a quick sort of further few points about the Reader Pen. They're totally battery operated, so completely portable. So as I mentioned, you can use them discreetly in the classroom. They're charged much like you would a mobile phone, and once charged, they'll last for 8 hours. So it's fantastic in terms of using all day. They do turn themselves off if they're not being used. So it's really, really great in that sense that you can actually have the confidence, unlike with some chargeable resources, you can have the confidence that the battery life will stay and hold throughout the whole day when using it. And ideal people that are using the pens, as I've mentioned, are people with dyslexia and SPLDs. We do see a lot of use with partially sighted students, again, because you get the audio, but also you're getting that highlighted visual as well of the text that you're reading out. And then just those with low self-esteem and reading anxiety. And there's a huge bracket of students with unidentified reading needs. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this, and we're seeing a lot more uptake for those with unidentified needs who are actually really benefiting from the support of the Reader Pen. So often they get put into a classroom setting, and the teachers identify maybe 1 or 2 students that they're likely to benefit from the Reader Pen, and they often come back to us and let us know that actually there are a number of additional students that they didn't identified to start with that have really sort of taken to the pen and are really enjoying the use. So they're really key sort of key sort of people who would be using the pen and benefiting from the pen, as well as EAL students. We've seen a huge increase in EAL students really benefiting from the pen, again having that audio where maybe they know the words but they don't know them when they're written down, or vice versa. So that's a real sort of supplement to their learning journey, as well as an English as an additional language student. So that's the sort of intro to the Reader Pen. And then we wanted to look at how self-supporting literacy aids can really, and student-led literacy activities can really help you to implement Reader Pens as this independent support strategy. And then in turn, build confidence, as previously mentioned. So when schools order our pens, or parents, you can take trials of schools or parents, they're free. The parent trials are something we added in during the lockdown because we had an increased uptake in parents requesting to be able to use the pens at home. So we've kept them on because, they seem to work really well for parents in the home learning environment. But yeah, when schools or parents order Reader Pens, we provide them with a downloadable copy of the Helping Hands Detective Agency, which you can see on the screen there. And the Helping Hands Detective Agency is a book of 15, I was going to say 14, that's definitely 15 short stories and follow-on activities that are designed to introduce the Reader Pen's functions to the students and then build their confidence when using the pen as their new support measure. And these have been designed by our in-house education team, our Senko, Julia, with years of experience as a Senko and as an advisor. So she's really sort of well positioned to have created these resources, and we get great feedback on them. And we know we did it because we know implementation of any resource, not just the Reader Pen, any resource, can be really tricky, as it can be time consuming for teachers to show students how to use it and then to embed it into their normal way of working. And that can be a hindrance. And under normal circumstances, that can be a hindrance. And now, with teacher time even limited and you guys stretched even further, we feel it is absolutely crucial that the implement of a Reader Pen can be student-led. So by giving these resources, we feel that we are doing this in a sort of engaging student-led way. And I say engaging because the stories, they're fun, they're characterized, as you can see from the graphic there, they're colorful, and they're put together using the building learning power pedagogy. So they really support the student in empowering themselves and really sort of becoming confident in embedding this support strategy in their normal way of working. And in turn, this resource hopefully makes teaching staff's jobs easier in terms of evaluating whether the Reader Pen is actually providing your student with the required support, as you can witness their progress through the activities. So, there's sections for them to fill in, where actually in the next slide, you'll see that they can actually, if I flick to the next slide, you can see that how it is. So it's set out where you've got the short story on one page and the activity on the next page. And there's areas for them to fill out, questions for them to do, checkbox to ask them how they're feeling about the resource. And it really sort of has that whole student-led feedback, that pupil voice element to it. So hopefully as they're working through it, you can really see and evaluate quite easily whether this is a support method that's going to work for them and benefit them going forward in their learning journey. And it has been brilliant. We, of course, don't send printed copies. I'll show you a printed copy. They are lovely. Of course, now we can't send these printed copies just because we're encouraged not to share resources out, but they're lovely 15-page activity books. And they actually have a lot of build-up information in the first few pages about the ways in which they support students and the type of students they support and how they should be being used. So what we do is we send out a downloadable copy that can be downloaded and then printed out as many times as necessary so that you can use those with your students and really hopefully sort of get that student-led feedback and help to implement the READERPEN as this sort of independent assistive technology strategy that really can help children flourish with their learning journey. And that brings us on to the additional resources that we have with the READERPEN. So of course I mentioned that we have the Helping Hands Detective Agency. We of course send over an instruction guide and a user guide, which is like, you know, all your FAQs, sort of ways in which the pen should be being used. And it just allows you as a teacher to get that sort of training straight away from a manual, whereby if you do have to give student support, you can really easily. And as you can see here, we've got Literacy Passport written on here, which is a resource that reverts back from the classroom to the parents. And it's another book that looks like so, and it comes complete with reading strategies and transition documents. So not only does this help the sort of Senko parent discussion, but it also helps the transition from year 6 into year 7. And as I've already mentioned, we see so much use in the secondary schools that we feel this transition passport, this literary passport, this transition documents in it really help that transitional phase as well. We have a number of case studies on the website, which I'll share with you guys, video case studies, written case studies, academic research, which is all fantastic. So there's a wealth of resources that help you implement this as a support method. And mentioning case studies, it brings me on quite nicely to my next slide, which is where I'm going to introduce Emma. So hopefully, Emma, you're still there. Yeah, brilliant. The joys of technology. So thanks for sticking with me, Emma. Yeah, so Emma is an SEN literacy specialist, as I mentioned, and really, I've got a few points on the screen, Emma. Hopefully you can see them. And it's just really, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions so you could share your experience with scanning pens and a bit about the work you do. Yeah, to kick it off, if you just give us a bit of an introduction to the work you do and the sort of students you support.
Yeah, so I'm a specialist literacy teacher working in 4 different schools. So I go in and out of the schools working with children who have significant difficulties with reading, writing, spelling. And the way I came across scanning pens actually was that I was in one of my schools. I had no experience with the pens, and one of the boys I was working with had one of his own. Okay. And it just happened that I was in a maths lesson with him, and he went to get his pen, and the pen helped him access his maths work. And I just thought this was amazing. Really? So the interesting thing about him was he wasn't actually using it completely properly, because he was using it well in that context. But his teachers said he was trying to read whole pages of his book with it. Yeah. So I was able to support him to use it properly, to use it for lines. Really, I say to children, sit with the pen in your hand, read, and when you get stuck, use the pen. So that's how I'm using it, and that's the way I came across it.
Yeah, and I mean, in that instance, I guess from what you said with that student, you didn't sort of have to identify why he'd benefit because he was already using it. So he showed it to you, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
In other instances, how have you identified students you thought might benefit from the pen? Or
so we've got a couple of pens in a couple of my schools, and really we're still at the stage where we're trialing it. We're seeing how we can use them, and my idea is that we're using them, we've got them with individual children. So not just because of the current restrictions, but just because I'm really interested to see how the technology can support an individual with difficulties to access cross-curricular. So, for instance, in a year 6 history lesson or science lesson, some of the children I work with will really struggle because although it's not a reading lesson as such, they may be having to access a chunk of text, and the children sitting next to them are reading this chunk of text and they're getting stuck. Yeah. So we've got a couple of children in a couple of schools with the pens, but pre-lockdown we had them with year 6s. So I've had experience of 4 children using them in this way, and we're just really interested to see what difference it makes. So it's important to select. So you were asking me about which children. So I do think it's key who you put them with, and I talk to class teachers and year group leaders about this. I mean, we've only got a pen in each school, so it's about putting it with the right person at the moment for us. And we're looking for children who've got literacy difficulties, but they've got to be able to access age-appropriate text to some extent. You want them to be the sort of children whose decoding difficulties or reading difficulties are slowing them down maybe, or decoding text is effortful, so that the pen is in effect making texts more accessible to them, and it's speeding them up, if you like.
Yeah. No, certainly. And I think we completely agree. I think the children who are really having that sort of block in the processing of text, but actually have the cognitive ability to answer the questions that are facing them, that's where the pen has its real sort of value, I think. And I know you've mentioned to me before as well, I think you said, I know as well, when I attended an event down at Brighton Hove, we saw a lot of videos about the impact it had on some of these year 6 students that used it previously. So I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about that, because I know you had some glowing stories about the ways in which children
that's really their initial reaction. The children, none of the 4 children I've used it with had ever. They were all children with significant difficulties. Some have been identified with dyslexia, and some of them haven't. But we're talking about children with significant difficulties, and to show them a pen that reads tricky words to them, without exception, all 4 of them are just, well, one of them, the first one I showed it to, actually, I've written down what she said. She just said, "Oh my goodness, I never knew that such a thing existed." And, to have a child who, by year 6, often their self-esteem is beginning to suffer. They're becoming very aware of their difficulties. And also, a lot of the children I work with in year 6 are getting anxious about the move to secondary. And so to have, it's early days for us. We're still learning. We haven't had them in school for that long. And, I'm not saying that we don't have glitches, but it's about my role, really. I don't actually sit in my sessions with children with the pens. But the children with the pens, I check in with them and I make sure they're using them correctly. And going back to the pens themselves, we're very much using them in the reader. Do you call it text reader mode? We're very much using, that's what we're using. We're not really using any of the other functions. And the other thing to say is, one of the boys I've got them with at the moment has got a problem with his ears. So initially I was a bit worried, because obviously they want to have a headphone in for it to be discreet and for them to still be part of the lesson. But he actually brought his own headphones in from home, and they fit in the socket. So we sort of got round that.
That's a nice point.
My role really is I'm just making sure that it's running well, because what I want them to do is not use them with me. I want them to use them in class. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, I for one, I remember seeing that some of the videos that they'd put together about using some of the reader pens, and it's just, I mean, those are those kind of wow moments that really, for the work that we do, it's scanning pens. I know someone like yourself, you're providing a lot of other support, but and most of the people on this call are providing loads of different methods of support. But for us who just focus on this one method of support, it is fantastic when we get those, those sort of wow moments where, it is. It's not an overstatement, if you like to say, life-changing when someone says, "Wow, I didn't know this existed." And actually, when you're saying about these anxieties building up into year 6 and going into secondary school before that transition, that is the key part of my job, is to open people's eyes to the fact that these can be implemented early, and not, because we find so many students are identified with their reading difficulty late, having left primary phase with a reading age below the required rate, and then they're given this tech, but they're given this tech quite late on into their learning journey, and hopefully you know, the earlier that it's implemented, the sort of larger impact it can have. So no, thank you, Emma. It's really great to sort of get your feedback, and it's been brilliant to sort of hear how it's working across a number of different sites for you. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Thank you. And so guys, yeah, that pretty much brings us towards the end of our session. And I know a number of you had asked how long the session will take. So I've kept to my word and kept it in between 30 and 40 minutes. So I'm happy about that. We don't want them to drag on too much, but hopefully you've all found it really informative. I will send out a recording of the session to you all, along with the resources that have been discussed on the day. And there is just something, I'll get to the questions in a second. There's something I wanted to mention here that you can see on the screen, which is the Succeed with Dyslexia Learning Festival. It's the 26th of October. We've got a number of engaging speakers speaking across the day. It's going to be action-packed. I will include a link in the follow-up email to register and attend for that, but it's going to be led by our education team, who I mentioned created the fantastic resources that we touched on today. And it's going to be really engaging. There's speakers from across the Atlantic, over in the States. There's UK-based speakers, and we are really excited about it. So yeah, I'll get the registration link out to you for that. And let me just get into the chat box, because there are a number of questions here that I want to answer. So one is, am I correct in thinking that these pens are not suitable for youngsters who need large chunks of text reading to them? They are better for single words. So I don't know if everyone heard that. I was just sort of reading it to myself. The question says, am I correct in thinking that these pens are not suitable for youngsters who need large chunks of text reading to them, and that they are better for single words? Now, it's a good question. It's a question that I often get asked. You can, if you want something read out, the entire pages of books read out to you, you can get reader apps. The reading pen, you can read large chunks of text, scan larger chunks of text and have that read out to you. It doesn't limit you in how much you can to scan. But the real benefit we see, and I think Emma kind of touched on it as well, is for the children or students who they are struggling with certain areas of text and struggling to process certain words. So, you know, actually decoding a question or an individual piece of a paragraph, that's their issue. It works really well to then scan, you know, a word that's a problematic area of text, hear the meaning of that, scan the sentence to hear it in context, and then move on and keep you sort of up to speed and keep you being able to access this age-relevant text that I'm mentioning. So yes, you can read large chunks of text. The real benefit comes from, you know, students identifying areas that they struggle with themselves, and then obviously using it to sort of understand what that word is, and hopefully gaining some stickability, like I mentioned, from having the audio and the visual. So hopefully they, you know, if they're struggling with a certain area of text, maybe once they've scanned it and seen it and heard the meaning of that word a few times, maybe it will stick and improve their literacy skills going forward. So yeah, thanks for that question. I hope that answers it. Please, if it doesn't, put your response in the text box as well. And another one, are the resources available compatible with different reader pens we already have in school? We have a C pen. Well, no, luckily. So the reader pen is a C pen. I don't know if you can see. So it's a C pen reader pen. So yeah, you have the correct pens, if you like. They're definitely the sort of most well recognized and well used reading pens on the market, C pen. And yeah, at Scanning Pens, we are the exclusive distributor of those pens. So yeah, all the resources completely compatible, and I will make sure they're sent out to you following this session. Someone else was asking the same question about the text. There's a question about the use in exams and SATs. So yes, this pen here, the reader pen, you can't use in your SATs exams, but we have a version called the exam reader. Now, the exam reader doesn't have the dictionary. It doesn't have the ability to store text in. It doesn't have the ability to do the recorder. It simply is a text reader that allows you to scan over text and have that read back to you. So helping you decode and process text and decode questions in your SATs exam. The English reading paper, you can't use your SATs, use it in SATs, but it is something that they are recommended. There's no access arrangements attached to using them in the SATs exams. Anybody can benefit from them as long as it's their normal way of working. And I personally feel that it is if you feel students can benefit from this in their SATs, it's brilliant, because the amount of use we see of these in GCSEs, where you can use them in every paper, even your GCSE English reading paper, the amount of use we see is tremendous. We sell so many exam readers for GCSE and A-level use. So, you know, I mentioned early implementation earlier. The earlier we can get these into the normal way of working, so if students can benefit from them in SATs, you know, we're all for that. We can provide you with all the information to show that they are allowed and recommended for use in SATs. So I'll make a note to send you over an exam flyer, Linda, who asked that question there. Thank you. And the languages, I've had a question about the languages. Now, there is actually a specific pen, the Lingo pen, which does I think up to 20 languages. And again, I can Susan, I can send you information on the Lingo pen, which is a translation pen. The Reader Pen works in French and Spanish and English. It has dictionaries in all of those, and those are the key languages that this pen works in. And I've had a question also about how reliable they are and how long is the guarantee. So another good question, another question that we get asked a lot, because people think assistive tech resources get smashed around the classroom. And actually, do you know what? I don't know if it's surprising or not, but we really don't get that many requests to use the guarantee or the warranty. But we do have a 12-month no quibble or no quabble manufacturer's warranty. So yeah, that allows you to, as long as the pen exists still, you know, it could be broken, but as long as the pen exists, it hasn't been stolen, if you like. If you return that to us, we will replace that. That's for the first year. And in terms of like how long they work for, if we have updates, we send them out. So for example, certain features will update, certain dictionaries will update, that kind of thing. And if you're a customer of ours, we send out an email update for you to be able to plug the pen into the computer and update them yourselves. And if you really can't do that, we have had instances where people have sent the pens back to us at the Scanning Pens office, and we've done the updates for them. Obviously, we would encourage for the updates to be done in school, especially now. But yeah, so the pens don't really go out of date. You know, if you've got the pens in school, you can always keep them up to date with the latest software, free updates. And yeah, it's as easy as that, really. And like I say, we don't really have many questions of sort of them going wrong for students. They are quite robust. There's not a lot sort of hanging off them, and you can get nice, I mean, I've got this in a lanyard. You might not be able to see because it's see-through, but you can get nice sort of cover cases as well. And they do come with quite tough, durable cases that they live in as well. So yeah, that's those questions. I'm just looking back to more of these questions here. So I've had a question. So how do you get the pens? How much are they, and how do you trial them? Well, that's great questions. I'll send you all an email to following this session with the recording of the session, and of course it'll have my details on it. It has links to the resources, and it'll have links to the website where you can request a trial, but equally you can just reply to me on email, and we have a discussion normally about how many students you're really thinking to trial them with. So we can send numerous pens for the trial. They last for 30 days. We've got half term coming up, so if anybody is really keen to trial now, we can actually extend the trial so you don't lose time over the half term break. Yeah, they're third stage trials, but we can extend them over the holidays. They come with all the resources. Just respond to me or do the form online that I'll send in the email to get the trial. And once you've trialed them, and if you want to purchase, the pens are £200. And they get, as you buy more pens for the school, you get a slight discount as you go up in the amount of pens you purchase. I'm just looking. So someone's put, you can convert the C pen into the exam reader through a lock. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can. It's a funny bit of legislation actually at the minute. So this has an exam lock on it. Now, we don't want to try and sell, as funny as it may seem, we don't want to try and sell two products, this and the exam reader. So we created a product where you can have the exam lock on, and essentially you put a PIN code on the pen. So it eliminates the features that I mentioned on the exam pen. So the dictionary, the text reader stays, but the storing ability and all that is now password protected. The only issue is that I know in certain markets like Ireland, the SEC exam body, they have approved that this, once locked, can be used in your exams. For SATs, I don't believe it's approved. I'll be honest, I'll have to check, because in my knowledge, you have to have the exam reader in the UK SATs, and you definitely do in the UK GCSEs. But I can check that up. We're always sort of updating the legislation. We are really fighting for the exam lock to be used in SATs, but yeah, I'm not sure. You may, Sarah, I know it's a great question. You mentioned you've been told that. So if I hope you're right, but I'll have to check. So I will check and I'll get back to you. And I think, unless I'm missing any, I'll just have a scroll. I think I've answered everyone's question. If anyone I've missed any of them, so there are quite a lot of messages in the chat. If there are any that I've missed, please shout them out now. But if not, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. As I say, everything will be sent out to you that's been mentioned in the session. If you want to organize further demos for you, cluster of schools you work with, any students you support, you know, I'm always available to do so. So yeah, please just get back to me on the email with any further questions, queries, or anything else I can do. Yeah, thank you very much for attending, and have a great afternoon, evening. Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.